The HR Happy Hour Network is sponsored by WorkHuman. Employees recognized for milestones are 3 times more likely to believe their company actually cares about them. 3 times. So why are companies so bad at it? The stale bagels, the branded swag, the audacity. WorkHuman believes milestones deserve their moment. The space for the people who know you best, your actual work circle, to reflect on your journey, your wins, your impact. The inside jokes, the big moments, all of it. It's called Service Milestones. AI finds the right people, automation handles the rest, and employees choose their own reward from millions of options curated just for them. Milestone like you mean it with WorkHuman, a proud supporter of the HR Happy Hour Network. Find out more at workhuman.com. And thanks for joining us. Welcome back to the HR Happy Hour Show. My name is Steve Bose. It is great to be here today. I'm with Trish Steed. Trish, what is happening?
Hi, it's good to see you. I'm glad we're recording today. I'm going to happily report we're having some sun in Colorado after 7 inches of snow yesterday. So, who knew? Snow in May. It's
Seems much too
fantastic.
late in the year to be talking about
Right?
snow, but it
I'm
is
ready
not
for
too
sun.
late in the year to be talking about global hiring and the global labor market. That was a pretty good segue.
That was a
Actually,
great
I'm really
segue.
excited about this topic. We have with us today Lauren Thomas. She's a labor economist at Deel. Trish, Deel is a global workforce platform that helps companies hire, pay, and manage both employees and contractors all over the world, right? Really fascinating and interesting company. Lauren is here. Welcome, Lauren. First of all, let me say hi to you. How are you?
I'm good, and I'm very sad to report that there is not very much sun in London, but there was last week, so it does exist. No snow to speak of.
London is one of my it's probably my favorite city to go to. So, yeah, I've been there many times and always with sun. So, must just
Oh,
be
that's
Yeah, well, that's
lucky.
cool.
I
Like
know.
my best
London
friend.
is a great city. I'm sure they're
It
excited.
is.
Our friend Mervyn Dinnan, I'll shout him out, who hosts a show on
Mhm.
our network, very excited about his Arsenal Gunners advancing to the Champions League final. It just happened yesterday, I believe, or the day before.
Last
But
night, I
mhm.
live 10 minutes away from Emirates Stadium, and
Nice.
That's
Deal's a sponsor.
outstanding. Do you
Yeah,
go
So,
good
is
often?
stuff.
that I do go sometimes, yes. I went earlier this year.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
Love
yeah.
it. We'll
So,
have to chat about
technically,
that,
I'm
Lauren.
also an
Yeah,
Arsenal fan.
Steve's a
I
huge
love the
fan.
beautiful game, as it were.
Mhm.
But
I
the
love
other
that.
thing I love, honestly, is the labor market. I do. Lauren, I think you
Me
have
too.
one of the coolest jobs in the world. I'm a little jealous of it. You're a labor economist at Deal. First, let's learn a little bit more about you, and then let's talk about what being a labor economist is all about.
Yeah, definitely. So, I'm here in beautiful sunny London. As I said, not so sunny right now. I am an economist. My background is in economic research. That's where I started out my career in New York at the New York Fed. But then I moved to Europe and went into tech as one does when one moves to Europe, of course. And for the past few years, I've been working on economic research and communications at companies like Glassdoor and Stripe. And now I'm here at Deal.
Great. That's fascinating. And Deal is, as I said, a global workforce platform operating all over the world, helping companies with employees, with contractors, and manage compliance, pay, all kinds of things. So you're looking at the labor market really globally, all around the world.
Yeah, that's right. That's very much one of our unique selling points, I think, of the platform and of the data that we have. And I'm a super data nerd, so that's something that I absolutely love about the job.
Well, one of the things we're excited about, and he's serious. We follow this stuff so closely, but your State of Global Hiring report came out, and we were lucky enough to get a little bit of an advance peek at it, and would just love you to maybe start talking high level. What is the purpose of the report? What are you all looking to provide, both to your customers, but to other people who are even considering working with Deal?
Definitely. So we wanted to look at what's going on in the world of global work. And because Deal has this super unique data set, we thought that we were positioned to speak to a couple of very interesting, unique trends. And so we're really focused on a couple of things in the report. First of all, we were looking at what is the state of global hiring? And by global hiring, we mean when companies are hiring people who live in different countries across
Mm.
borders. And so we saw that we're very much seeing like top funded startups are choosing talent rather than cost savings. We also saw that in emerging markets, ops roles were seeing a lot of growth, whereas C-suite and senior and product level roles were seeing a lot of growth in more mature markets. We also looked at what's going on with a brand new profession, which is called AI training, which I'm sure we will dive into great detail later on. And Deel really has a lot of those unique jobs on our platform. And then finally, we looked at okay, what's going on with payments? How are people choosing what currencies are people choosing to withdraw? How are people choosing to go about getting paid? And because Deal really offers like some really unique ways for our workers to get paid, that means that we can observe cool insights about what people are choosing to do in a way that you couldn't necessarily see in other places.
Yeah, that one particularly hits home for me because I've always been a fan of trying to make pay available to people in the way that they need it to show up. And that's
Yep.
just now really starting to happen with technology in the last few years. But yeah, as a payroll person for many years, that was always a pain point. So I can't wait till we get to that one.
Top level findings, Lauren, is particularly around cost savings not being maybe the number one priority or criteria that organizations are using when hiring. And I guess if you think about it, it makes some sense because if you're expanding globally and you're looking in particular markets, maybe, you've got to look for talent first versus maybe try to solve for cost optimization. And that's what's showing up, it seems like.
Yeah, no, that's very much the case. And I think we're really seeing this in two kind of different subsets of our data. So the first thing that we looked at is what's going on with our top funded startups. So
Okay.
who are top funded startups? Like what does that even mean? Those are companies that have raised over $100 million in funding and have been founded within the last 5 years, much like Deal itself, actually.
Okay.
But we were
All
not included in this
right.
analysis. And so one of the things that I looked at was where are those companies hiring and how does it differ from kind of the general small and medium-sized business market?
Okay.
And what I found there was that these companies are super focused, laser focused on expanding into high income countries, mature markets, and they're very focused on hiring employees in those markets. And so our top country was one that does not surprise me, but I think might surprise others. And that is the country in which I live, which is the UK.
Okay.
I myself partially chose to move to the UK because of the tech scene here, actually, compared to where I was before. And so it did not surprise me that it was actually the top country for our top funded startups to be hiring from abroad in.
That's really interesting. I think it was surprising overall, like you're saying, for this to be such an important factor that pops up to the top. One of the things that was really interesting when I was reading through it is that the hiring decisions are increasingly being driven by the capability gaps. Could you maybe expand on that a little bit? Like, I mean, especially in a startup, that's something I guess I was a little bit surprised about.
Yeah, so this is something that our data shows, and actually, there's been other research that has backed this up as well. So, what does our data show? It very much shows that the sorts of jobs that these companies are hiring for are not only like software engineers, which is what you would expect because a lot of
Yeah.
these startups are tech companies, and so software
Mhm.
engineers are obviously a core capability for them. But they're also hiring sales and marketing and client relation roles. So roles that where you really need to know the local market. And that's
Oh.
something that, as an American in the UK, I know well. I've seen a lot of American companies try and sell into the UK. And I think that things that might seem obvious to you would not
Uh-huh.
necessarily seem obvious to them. Things that might seem like an obvious sell. Even something as random as in the UK, it's normal to get paid once a month. In the US, it's normal to get paid twice a month.
Uh-huh.
So something
Mhm.
like that, even something that little, having a salesperson who doesn't know that for an HR, for our product, for HR tech,
Right.
or you can imagine a similar sort of thing for a lot of our clients. And so in general, we're definitely seeing these companies looking to hire people who really know the local market. And that's not just something that, our research shows. There has also been research showing that remote work is really good for startups because it lets them tap into these really unique roles. For them, like the talent gap is really the most important thing. And so remote work really enables them to hire all over the world,
Mhm.
and to find that talent and that capability.
Yeah, it really
Well,
is level setting for them, for someone that's, a company of that size, I think, helps them
Yeah.
compete much better with maybe a mid-sized company.
I was gonna say, can you imagine trying to do this like 20 years ago, trying to expand into a new market as a small company? I mean, that's something
Yeah.
where the sort of innovations that we've seen have really enabled that to happen.
Yeah.
when I read some of the data in the report about that, about like the local expertise and the need for it, I was encouraged a little bit, right? Because we are hearing so much about disruption in labor markets, certainly here in the U.S., but I suppose elsewhere. Um, the AI kind of taking over roles, they're every other day, it seems like, right, Laura? And there's a CEO making an announcement about some layoffs and attributing
Mhm.
them at least wholly or in part to AI and the effects of AI in the organization. But on the other hand, right, you look at some of the data in your report saying, hey, these companies are recognizing the fact that this local expertise, cultural and business expertise and understanding of the norms and the processes, et cetera. So that's a really human thing still, right? That's not a
Mhm.
let's have an AI take care of that, right?
Right.
It's really
A
interesting.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's something that I always say. And in fact, some of these CEOs themselves have said, we're going to be focusing on expanding our sales roles, because they know that, are you going to trust an AI that just shows up on your screen and tries to sell you something? No, especially not if you're a big enterprise, right? Because a lot of these enterprise deals are done over a long time. They're about building
For
relationships,
sure.
they're about building trust, they're about building credibility. And
Yeah.
that's something where humans not only have the advantage now, but I think we'll have the advantage forever. Like even as AI continues to grow in technical capabilities, there are still some things that only people can do. And I think trust, credibility, forming these relationships, interpersonal communication, the soft skills that we hear so much about, it's very much coming back into fashion. And I think that's why, we didn't cover this specifically in the GHR, but it's something that I've looked at separately. We're seeing kind of growth in these forward deployed engineers or pre-sales engineers or sales engineers kind of roles, which are really a hybrid between those soft sales skills and those hard technical skills. And that's something where I think we're going to see a lot more of these kind of generalists, kind of hybrid roles in the future. So it's never been a better time to be a jack of all trades, which is great because that's what I am.
Nice.
So I'm happy about that.
Yeah, and, Steve and I have both been in that buyer's seat before, and I won't speak for you, Steve, but I guarantee I would not buy from something that was not real, right? Not AI is great at giving you information, but you're right. You have to have a solid product, whatever the product is that you're selling. And you also do have to have people that are knowledgeable. It makes you feel more comfortable and not that you're putting your job on the line by making that purchase decision.
Well, yeah, I agree with that, Trish. And it may even not, I mean, that's a fairly stark example that we've made a couple of times here
Mhm.
about, buying from an AI. But it could even be, and I'd love to get Lauren's take on this. It could even be just when the employee, say, who's working on the deal or doing the business development or doing the sales is, I don't know, a UK based employee in the companies in Eastern Europe, right? Those are
Mhm.
Europe's not all the same, right? Latin America's not all the
No.
same. Asia Pacific certainly not all the same, right? Yeah.
Right.
And so organizations who are hiring globally have got to think about that, right? It's not just, hey, we need people. It's more
Right.
nuanced, I suppose, I guess. Lauren, I'd love your thoughts on that.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that cultural nuance where the opportunity lies, is, what I would say to that. And that's something that I've spent, well, really the last several years saying, but it's something that is showing up all the more, in the last few months since we started looking at this data. This is, we're very much seeing our top funded startups. They're very much hiring these sales engineers, these marketing roles. And even not just our top funded startups, but actually when you zoom out, when we look at the second subset of companies that we looked at, was just sort of just our general cross companies that are hiring across borders. Seven of the top 10 of these, what we call cross border, so roles that are getting hired by companies from abroad, seven of these 10 cross border roles are in sales or marketing or customer facing functions,
Oh,
which means, local market knowledge is not really possible to automate.
yeah.
Right.
That's a great conclusion. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Let's just say this. Let's talk about AI a little bit, right? One of the things in the report, and I think about this some too, right? About just how AI is impacting labor markets, how it's impacting jobs, right? We've mentioned it already once, but Deel in the report and just through the platform, you've sort of talked about and maybe discovered, if that's a word we can use, there's a whole
Hmm.
human ecosystem around AI that there's a lot of global hiring for. And in certain roles, I would love for you to talk about that a little bit, what you found, and kind of what that might suggest about global hiring moving forward, particularly in this AI era we're in.
So we found that AI trainers, which is kind of a distinct new profession, is one of the fastest growing roles on our platform. And in fact, in terms of cross border roles, so where companies are hiring from abroad, it's actually the fastest growing one on our platform. And
Wow.
so, what is an AI trainer? In some sense, this job has been around for a while. It used to be called something like data annotator, image labeler. Those were really the people who helped build the foundational models that we have today. We would not have the models we have today, the chatbots, the chat GPTs, the Claudes of the world without them.
Mhm.
But what I think is distinct and what is new is there is a new type of AI trainer that is really appearing on the scene. And these were roles that were literally not possible until a few years ago. And that's why they're fast growing. That's why they're showing up now. These are the people who have domain expertise and they're using their domain expertise to make the models better.
Mm,
So you might imagine, okay, I really want to make an AI model that's going to help clinicians. My mom is a physical therapist and
Mm.
this is something where I think I wish there had been better AI models available for her because she was spending so much time on all these really long-winded, painstaking tasks that I think could have been much better done by a machine while she spent her time and her talent and her energy on actually helping patients. And it's actually
mm,
one of the reasons that she left being a physical therapist was because the amount of time that she was spending on these tasks. So this is not just some abstract thing. This is actually something that like really matters to people who work in these kinds of professions.
mhm,
But in order to have an AI model that could help someone like that, you need to make sure that it's trustworthy, that it knows what it's talking about, that it's not just going to hallucinate things. And that oftentimes means you need a domain expert who has medical knowledge or has physical therapy knowledge. In my own field in economics, I'm seeing job ads pop up all the time for AI trainer economists who are helping these AI models be able to provide better information about economics, about what's going on in the world of work. And I think we're seeing that throughout almost every profession, honestly, that you can think of. We're seeing
mm,
so many of these new domain experts become AI trainers. And a lot of them are pretty highly paid. So we have 19% of these workers who are earning more than 50 or who are earning between 50 to 75 USD an hour, and
mhm.
6% who are earning more than 100 an hour. And we
Really?
have more than 70,000 on our platform.
Wow.
So that's actually quite a
Wow.
few people.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one I hadn't really heard much about, so it was
Mhm.
definitely intriguing. I think too, the other element that's really exciting is that you're talking about this is for really experienced people who may have been in the workforce for quite a long time. And I think that can also be maybe at the intersection of where you start getting a little bit burned out on your job, or even in your mom's case, where you're feeling like what I really want to be doing is to help patients, for example. Um,
Yeah.
do you think that people who have that wealth of experience are thinking of these roles? I almost feel like I don't know if I would have thought of this. So is it just now starting to kind of get the word out about these AI training positions?
That's a great question. I can't imagine that people were really thinking a lot about this 2 years ago. But these are jobs that are very flexible. They tend to be, pick up when you want, do what you want, and so
Uh-huh.
they are probably really good for people who are burnt out or who have caregiving responsibilities or who are in
Oh,
graduate school. This is something that I would have loved to be able to do when I was in graduate school. I
right.
wish the opportunity had been available, but it wasn't. And so I think there's a lot to say about these sorts of roles.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, and it's encouraging as well. Again, thinking about we're all concerned about the labor market and people's ability to absorb technological change. I mean, I think more about probably people than any individual company because, quite frankly, I don't really care if any single software company is going to do well or not do well, right? I mean, I do, I guess, but I largely more care about what's going to happen to people and the disruption and with some of these roles that Lauren's talking about, and maybe just the fact that I was reading about Lauren. I hope this is not too crazy a reference. I was reading about the Jevons paradox as being applied
Of
to
course, not
AI.
crazy at all.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I didn't hit you
No,
with
I
something
love
too
that you brought
weird,
that up.
but I was really buying the argument that this Jevons paradox, which I don't know if you're familiar with this
I am,
concept,
yeah.
right? Okay, good. So that the demand is going to increase so much for these AI solutions as they get more efficient and get cheaper, right? It's going to create more and more opportunity for people. I hope that's how it plays out, both globally and certainly here in the US.
100%. And I will say, I think it's really important for anyone who's in this field to acknowledge that there is going to be disruption. And so that means that, I have a pretty optimistic view of the future, but I do think that this is an important issue that we definitely shouldn't be sleeping on.
Yeah.
It's definitely one where governments should be sitting up, paying attention, thinking about retraining, thinking about what's going to happen. With that said, Jevons paradox, which is the idea that as something gets cheaper, sometimes you actually see more of it, like more people working in it or more of it,
Right.
not less. And why does that happen? That's because of something that in economics we call it elasticity,
Hmm.
which basically means how does the amount of something that I want change in response to how much it costs. And so if if I have something like, oh, I don't know, a house and it gets really cheap. Maybe I might want another one, but I'm probably not going to want another 50 million houses,
Right.
hopefully not.
Right.
But if
Right.
it's something like software, I really see software as just kind of at its heart, it's just overcoming kind of the drudgery of life, right? And
Yeah.
so as long as there's still
Mm.
kind of drudgery, these annoying things that we don't want to do, that we'd rather have a computer do it for us, and there's plenty, as long as that still exists, as the cost of producing these software programs gets cheaper, people are going to want more of them, not less. And so, do I think we're going to see kind of a change in how software engineering is structured? Yes, but I don't think that we can count software engineers out yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's exciting when you think back of, just over the last 150 years. Anytime there's a big disruptor that comes in, everybody panics a little bit. And then when you finally settle in on understanding how to use whatever the tool was at the time, it really does open up all these new jobs. I mean, and your last example, I think, was a great first step in that, right?
Yeah.
So we probably can't even comprehend yet what positions could be created because of this need
Yeah.
as as the prices come down.
Yeah, I think that's very much true. I can talk about the short term, I can talk about the medium term, and to some extent, I can talk about the long term. But in reality, what's going to happen is dependent on a lot of things that we don't know yet, not just kind of elasticity, the thing I mentioned before, but also how are consumers going to respond to this new technology, right? It took a while. The internet's been around for a while, but it took a while for it to really be embedded into our daily lives. And how did it become embedded into our daily lives? It really happened not just through computers, but also through smartphones, right?
Mhm.
That's a hardware innovation, not necessarily a software one. And I think we might see the same thing with AI. We saw it wasn't, the ATM that led to bank tellers declining in employment, but it was the iPhone.
Right.
And I have to say that I didn't come up with that myself. Someone wrote a great essay on Substack about it, so you should totally
Mhm.
check that out. But I like to think to myself, well, what's going to be that? Like, what is the thing going to be that is going to work along with AI
Uh-huh.
in a way that is going to change the job market in a way that we can't even anticipate yet. You could imagine a world in which, for example, we all have open claw agents that do all of this stuff for us. And every morning we wake up and it says to us, uh, there's a big screen that appears in front of us and we're like, what do you want for dinner today? And I'm like, oh, that sounds good. And then it goes and orders the food for us. And so that might actually lead to fewer people working in grocery stores, even though grocery stores are not directly impacted by AI. And
Mhm.
so it's not
Yeah.
as simple as, oh, these are jobs which are highly exposed to AI. That means that they're going to fall. It's really not that simple at all. There's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah. One Lauren, thank you. One of the other things I just wanna make sure we get to before, we wrap up today, it's fascinating as well in the report because honestly, I we keep a lot of a US lens on things here. I do most of the stuff I'm concentrating on is on the US workplace and workforce, I'll admit that. So I don't think about this a lot, which is currency risk and
Mhm.
financial risk associated with payments in different currencies, particularly ones that maybe are a little less stable, maybe it's highly inflationary, maybe who knows, right? A lot of things are going on in the world. I'd love for you maybe to give us a little top line of what your report found in terms of how employees and employers, right, are adapting to some of these changes and then what options become available to them, certainly working with partners like Deel, right, to make security present for employees around the world.
Definitely. So I think first of all, I have to provide a little bit of background about how this works. So at Deal, we serve both employees and contractors. And contractors on our platform usually have the ability to withdraw not just in their local currency, but also in other countries' currencies and in something like crypto or stablecoin. And that's been around for a while. That's been around for several years.
Mhm,
And so that means that we can really see how people's behaviors have changed when something has happened in the world around them. And so there was a couple of really interesting things that we found from that. So firstly, when we looked at what were the most common country currency payment combinations in 2025, we saw that USD actually appeared in 5 of the 10 most common on our platform. And in Argentina, we actually saw more contractors choosing USD than the
Oh,
Argentinian peso, which was
mhm,
very interesting.
wow.
We're also seeing a rise in stablecoin adoption. So the countries which have the highest stablecoin adoption are some of the ones with the most currency volatility, or with
mhm,
Argentina at the top. I also looked at, how does inflation impact USD adoption, and also, that's very relevant in these countries which have really high inflation, which is
mhm,
not something that we were necessarily thinking about that much in the US. But even in countries where they don't have high inflation, but they have a lot of cross-border currency exposure, this is still a very relevant question. And so, across the pond here in Europe where I am, I also looked at which countries are using the euro most and
mhm.
what happened to countries like Bulgaria and Croatia when they switched to the euro, which they just did in the past couple of years.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
so fascinating because again, we don't think about it much here, right? You keep your US lens or even a UK lens. If you're only really focusing on what's happening inside your own borders, you think, oh, we just pay everybody and make sure we get paid on time, make sure we pay them accurately, and that's really
Right.
all we need to worry about. There's a lot more to think about, right? When you're hiring globally and managing globally, particularly a blended workforce of employees and contractors. And it's it does sort of underscore the importance though of having that platform behind you, that technology platform that can help you and help these people, right, manage through these sometimes difficult problems, right, around paying and currency conversions and currency risk.
yeah, 100%, and that's what's so great about Deal.
Yeah,
And that means for me, I get this a whole load of data to say something about what's happening in the world.
yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. One of the
It is
things
cool.
I'm so glad, Steve, that you brought up the currencies, but I was reading through it and was really focusing on those regional hiring trends. I wonder, I know we're getting close to wrapping up, so maybe just high level, what can people expect to learn from the report as it relates to those hiring trends in some of those different regions?
Yeah, so we really saw kind of a diversity of trends across the platform, across the world, as of course you might imagine. But I actually think what's more interesting is what was the same rather than what was different. So we did see
Okay.
some diversity. So, in Latin America, for example, we did see a lot more of these operations roles. They were much more likely to have roles like customer service representative in their top 3 roles. But across the world as a whole, we very much saw a strong emphasis on not just, software developer, which is to be expected, but
Mhm.
also roles like, as I said before, sales and marketing, and client relations, which I consider different. Customer support is more B2C, client relations is really more B2B, customer success and all of that. And so
Sure.
again, these roles where you really need to have this kind of local knowledge,
Mhm.
I think that that was something that I found really fascinating. I looked up all these regional hiring trends, and that was something that I saw appear again and again. Tech sales was almost always one of the top roles.
Mm.
And so that was
Wow.
something that was super interesting for me.
Yeah. There's so much really cool data in this report and so much to dig into. And so we touched on some of the highlights, but there's plenty more there. We're going to put a link to the full report in our show notes as well. And I am geeked out, Lauren. I've loved this conversation. It's been great to talk what's going on in the global world of hiring. And honestly, I guess the last thing I'll throw out there real quick before we wrap, Lauren, is it's probably not ever been a better time for a smaller organization, mid-sized organization, say here in the US domiciled or in the UK for that matter, to be able to tap into global talent. It used to not really be possible for smaller and mid-sized companies, right? It just didn't make sense. It was unattainable. But now it's reachable and you can be successful at it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be that you would have had to set up a local legal entity, which would have required a ton of paperwork and paying lawyers and
Yeah.
unbelievably expensive. And you probably wouldn't have considered it until you really had a strong need to expand into a country. But now you can expand into a country from day one. And I think that the
Wow.
ecosystem has really enabled companies to do this, not just in the sense of having companies be able where you can sell to customers across border, but now you can even hire across border
Yeah.
compliantly, and you can do that with companies like Deel.
Yeah.
And what that means for me is I get to see what's going on in the world of work, and I get to see what's changing. And so I love the fact that people do this because it means that I get to share with you all about what's going on in the world of work.
Yeah.
I
Well,
love
that's
it. Well,
awesome.
be sure to come back. Every time you have new information, we'd love to give it because the people that are listening to this show consistently, this is the type of information they can actually act on in their organization
Yeah.
right now. So
Yeah.
it's the perfect
Well,
way to stay abreast of it all.
I love it.
well, they can find me on LinkedIn if they want to keep
There you
up to
go.
date. I
We will do
am
that.
almost every week I'm posting something new about what's going on in the world of work.
Lauren, this has
Awesome.
been so much fun. Lauren Thomas from Deel, from sunny London. Thank you for spending some time with us today. We want to thank our friends at Deel. We will put a link to the global hiring report in our show notes, as well as Lauren's information too. And I just want to say thanks again so much. I've loved the conversation and enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it as well.
Awesome. Trish, great stuff. I love this stuff. We will have to do this again. We'll put Lauren on our speed dial. Is speed dial
We are
still a
going to.
thing? Really isn't anything anymore. It's a very old reference. We'll, we'll,
Put her in your Rolodex,
we'll,
Steve.
Don't
we'll
worry,
ping
I
her.
understand.
We'll
I
ping
I get
her or
that one
something,
too.
whatever you do these days,
Yeah.
Snapchat
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
But this was a great show. I want to encourage everybody to check out the report and also go to hrhappyhour.net for all the shows on the global network as well. For Trish Steed, for our guest Lauren Thomas, my name's Steve Bose. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time. And bye for now.